Today's chapter, I'm going to do things a little bit different because we'll be talking about suffering. And suffering is interesting because it is your experience and your perspective. So I want you to understand, unlike others, I'm not trying to say that suffering is not real. I'm not saying that your journey isn't real. Your expectations, your attachments, your perspectives are all your own. All I'm trying to do is give you my perspective. And from that perspective, perhaps you might find a truth that you didn't know existed already. No matter what happens, I love you. I believe in you. I think you're amazing. And your experience is your experience. So I'm going to read today's chapter. In this chapter, I hope my vulnerability and transparency can help you see more of the truth that you already knew to be true. Today's thought: are you? Today's thought: what does it mean to suffer? Suffering, an elusive and deeply personal experience, often evades definition. While pain is subjective, as evidenced by the questions from doctors about pain on a scale from 1 to 10, suffering shares this trait. No two individuals experience suffering identically, even under seemingly identical circumstances. It's not uncommon for people to endure suffering in silence, presenting a facade of contentment until it becomes unbearable. This phenomena leads me to a perspective some may find controversial. Pain and suffering are inherently subjective because at their core, they are a choice. My belief might seem counterintuitive. Often it doesn't feel like a choice, and perhaps the decision on how we experience pain and suffering was made long before we understood its implications, leading us to believe it was never a choice. However, any phenomena that is entirely subjective must be considered a choice. I stand by the assertion, as my life, as you will soon discover, has been a testament to this philosophy. For a long time, I suffered in silence. Outwardly, I was the quintessential happy person, always smiling, in the company of others, yet internally I was in turmoil, yearning for a different life, burdened by my self-disappointment and a lack of self-understanding. My breakthrough came after delving into literature about the ego. I realized that my suffering had become an integral part of my identity. It was the conduit through which I connected with friends and embodied the stereotype of the good guy who always finished last. In my mind, I was a victim. The realization brought forth an unsettling question: who would I be without my suffering? How would my relationships evolve if this aspect of my identity changed? Embracing the power of choice transformed everything. My friendships, love life, and most importantly, my relationship with myself underwent profound changes. Letting go of my suffering was tantamount to shedding an old identity. The hardest part was acknowledging that my suffering was the last remnant of my past. It was a lens through which I viewed myself, a person defined by love and loss, failure, and resilience. This suffering, while painful, was integral to my identity as Django. The thought of losing this connection to my past was, in some ways, more daunting than the suffering itself. However, I recognize that everyone's journey is unique. For some, the role of suffering in life might never end. Yet for those who resonate with my experience, I pose a fundamental question. What kind of life do you want to gift your time? If your life has been defined by suffering, know that this doesn't have to be a permanent state. Ultimately, the choice is yours. Whether to remain tethered to suffering or to embrace the potential for change is a decision that each of us must make, guided by our individual experiences and perspectives. Look, here's the thing. I'm not a guru. I'm not enlightened because if I had stayed enlightened, I wouldn't be here. I have attachments. I recognize the role of suffering in my life, and I recognize it as a choice for myself. Now, everyone has a different perspective and everyone has a different experience, and I'll never actually tell you that that's not true. Whatever you believe to be true is absolutely true. But every time I use words, I'm able to communicate something to you that maybe you never recognized as true until this moment, but you always knew it was in there. If your life has been endowed with suffering, you've struggled, you've thought about the past, it hit you, you wish things were different, you missed the love of your life, you missed the things that you had, you missed the way things could have been. Perhaps the suffering is not necessarily objectively true, but is true because of who you believe you are. And the opportunity to live a life that is fulfilled and at peace and surrounded in truth is just slipping between your fingers as you try to grip at something that at the end of the day you don't have to hold on to. Perhaps it's more similar to you jumping into the river and trying to grab the river, pull it out, and put it on the bank. It's just not possible. You're holding on to something that cannot be held on to. It's through the grasping of life that often leads to the suffering that we feel. Let go. Enjoy the ride, or the roller coaster as I like to call it. I hope that this chapter was something that you enjoyed. And if not, I still love you. But never forget, nothing's real. Peace.